the last topic session of the day, that is the panel discussion. This will be moderated and coordinated by Jasvinder. We will be in good hands there. And Jasvinder and the panelists are the speakers who have presented during the day. And Jasvinder, over to you. Can you please coordinate the panel discussion? And we will have questions after that.
Yeah, okay. So just a quick introduction. I am the director of NAMAGRO. We are based in Vietnam. We work with thousands of farmers. We help large corporates buy directly from farmers from Vietnam and from different countries. We move close to 20,000 tons of pepper, which is roughly 10% of Vietnamese trade and 8% of local trade. We work on shared economy, where the smallest grower and smallest processor who does not understand what the quality requirements are, how to get working capital, how to sell to the corporates of the world, we help them. And we are a small company, we are consultants, we consult IPC, we consult World Bank, we consult various organizations, and we move product in large volumes. Now, one very important aspect which everybody has said is the grower. Now, there is no grower over here to come and ask questions. So I work with a lot of growers, and I'm going to be the grower representative, and I would like to ask panel or open some discussions from the grower's point of view. Now, everybody said about the value drop. For last 5 years, the value has been dropping. When we go to a grower, the grower says, you come to me, you say, put this, put that, increase the yield, etc., and you talk about sustainability. But actually, pepper farming is unsustainable now. So somebody asked, what is sustainability? What is measure of sustainability? Now, while people said that there is no broad measure as such, there are three pillars. One is the social part, one is the environmental part, and one is the economical part. Now, when we talk about sustainability, so part of that is also, there is an answer to a question where I'm going to answer or ask questions which are broader questions which concern everybody and growers as a whole. Direct or technical questions you can direct to the panelists directly later by emails. Now, the question was, how do we measure sustainability? What we have been doing with growers is, or what we've seen how they understand sustainability is, what you were doing a few years back and what you're doing now. For example, small processors and growers have understood that water consumption is very large for white pepper processing. And they have been innovating ways by which they can reduce water consumption. Water consumption has been reduced by 90% by making white pepper by the steam method now. In Vietnam, we are seeing processors who are able to process white from black by using a steam method and not putting it in water for days and using thousands of liters of water. So that water consumption has fallen by 90%. So one measure is water consumption. A second measure on the economic front is when a farmer participates in a sustainability program, how much he was getting an additional premium last year, what he got this year. If he got those $50 extra, yes, that is a measure of sustainability. If his yield increases in the next year, yes, that is a measure of sustainability. So sustainability can be measured by small things, breaking things down into smaller aspects and measures which really impact the farmer and which impact our environment. That is how we can measure sustainability, at the farm level. Now the key question of unsustainable pepper farming is still there. So I would like to open this discussion with the panelists that how do we go to the grower and we tell him that, what are we going to do as an industry to make pepper farming sustainable? Because he thinks the price of pepper is too low and I cannot cover my cost of production. And everybody comes and keeps telling me, let's grow pepper in different ways, but he's not able to meet his cost of production. So any thoughts about it?
Hopefully next year the prices could go up, but without relying on increase in prices, we have to find ways to reduce cost of production. And I think what Rivi and Olam is pioneering is in that direction with their application of technology. But I don't know how these technologies can eventually percolate to a small farmer with so much of technology getting involved.
So there was a question where somebody asked, when will the pepper price go up? Some of the traders and industry asked, they are curious, when the pepper price will go up. So what is the view of the panel? Because if you keep increasing yield, more production will happen, more pepper will come, how the price will increase?
Get into more value addition. Get more and more processing industries to
farmer can get into validation only to a limited level. The problem here is, while we have said and we have applauded, okay, fantastic, after the advent of this lane, yes, IPC has become very dynamic in the last 3-4 years, but a lot of damage had been done before that. Today, the least thing a farmer expects is transparency. He expects that we go back and tell the grower what is the supply and demand situation globally and how to manage yield of production. When the pepper prices touch $10,000 a ton for black pepper, one more answer on cannibalization. Black pepper eaters suddenly don't stop eating black pepper and switch to chilies. Otherwise, when black pepper went to $10,000 a ton, everybody would have stopped eating pepper and shifted to chilies. So, and likewise, chili eaters will suddenly not stop eating chili and run to pepper. So there is some sort of inelastic behavior there at the consumer level. And at even $10,000 per ton, people were consuming pepper, and now at $2,500 also there. So for the least, the member countries of IPC or IPC can do is be honest in reporting your numbers. Until the last 2-3 years, everybody in the trade has lost faith on what IPC was reporting and what the countries were reporting. Now in last 3 years, okay, we are saying, okay, this is the total production and demand and consumption, etc. So can we actually take an oath, the member countries and IPC and everybody to go back to growers and to able to give transparent information that how to plan production? Because in rising prices, they will plant more, then there will be a crash. Why there is unsustainable farming? Because pepper farmers who bought new land prices have crashed, pepper prices have crashed, they cannot recover their investment. Today there are foreclosures. Banks are coming and taking over their land. Today, pepper farmers have to sell their poles for a livelihood. Marginal farmers with 1 hectare and below, they simply do not have the bandwidth or resources of a large corporate to understand what is happening. But we can talk all about very nice things and trends, but how can we all come together and make a mechanism where growers are involved into the entire trade as such? So one way is Ravi is doing a fantastic job. He's expanding his growing to thousands of farmers, because whatever good he does and whatever money he spends in his farm will percolate to a large audience by default, even though he may not capture that value. But those farmers are going to benefit from what Olam is doing into the farm. But how many of us are really reaching out there, and what we could do could be an agenda for IPC or members to wander from the growers aspect to manage production actively, and area of production is very important over there, because as area expands, supply expands. So now one more question was there in the which people had asked, that why prices keep going down, when it will spike. Now the clear answer to that, we made a presentation in ASTA a few years back. If you plot 100 years of ASTA price, there are cycles. The cycles before were 20 years, the cycles now are 10 years. With the advent of information technology, everybody knows the price and he understands how to correct things in the trade. So we've seen 5 years of price drop. We are perhaps at the lower cusp of falling prices, and we see markets turning. To be fair to numbers, when we say that nothing happened because of Corona and demand increase, when we look at numbers, the exports globally reduced by a small percentage this year. So there was an impact of COVID. Despite exports reducing by 5%, we saw in the data also, the prices rose by 20%. So there is a fundamental change happening, that despite demand dropping, demand never fell down in the last 10 years. Exports were always increasing every year, but the prices were also falling in the last 5 years. But this year, the prices actually turned around. So next year is perhaps going to be a year of caution, and this is what the numbers also show. Some people have been asking, okay, why There are high numbers of carryover stock in Malaysia. Some people are asking why there are high numbers of carryover inventory in different countries. The key aspect here to look at is the difference, not the absolute number. What we presented is what the country gave us as numbers, and we presented that as it is. But then we have estimated after discussion with the trade that, okay, what could be the change this year? So the change this year is the most important part from a trade view. What you have mentioned or what Ms. Lin said at the end of the presentation, that we will see a slight drop in the supply next year. We will see increase in demand. For the quarter one, China was practically non-existent in the market. Next year, quarter one, China will be there, and China imports 65-70,000 tons. They are as big as a consumer in terms of pepper as the United States. So demand will somewhere normalize, and perhaps even if it doesn't grow, if it normalizes, there would be an increase over there in that aspect. So then the other thing on value drop essentially is excess supply to demand, and that is what we've been seeing in the last 5 years. So there were some more questions which the panelists have come, and I will direct. Okay, there is a question by the audience that IPC reports numbers coming from ministries in producing countries. There is no agenda. The largest discrepancies come from exaggerations or diminutions for commercial gain by exporters and brokers. So, what can we say about this? Is there any answer by the panel?
Can I say something?
So, Jasvinder, just to dwell on the previous subject which you talked about the wide fluctuation in the prices. There are. If you look at pepper, I think it is one of the most very, very old trade that has been surviving for so many years. And in that, we can say over a longer period of time, it is a sustainable, trade or a sustainable business. Since it has overcome so many centuries and it has been surviving. Secondly, what I would say is you have to look at it not only from the producer's point of view, but also from the consumer's point of view. There are years when the pepper prices are very much higher than the cost of production, and those are the years when the consumers have been in the backseat. So this seesaw battle between the consumption and production has been going on for years. And one of the key things why this has survived, is mainly because pepper is not an essential commodity for survival of human beings. So there are the consumption also has been very low as compared to other food products in the basket. In the entire spend on food, the consumer can afford to bear the higher price. So that's why what you said, that even if the price goes to $10,000 per ton, the consumption doesn't drop for pepper. So considering all these factors, farmers need to be provided the right information on what is going to be the acreage, the correct acreage of pepper that has been planted all across the world, and what is going to be the production. And based on that information, they can take a decision and also provide them with the historical price movements, so they understand much better the risks they are taking when they plant pepper. So other thing we can look at promoting is how we can encourage them to not depend on just one crop, whether they can have other crops also along with pepper, either multi-cropping or having separate, distributing their land holding among various crops. Some of short-term crops which can give them, help them to tide over the low prices. Third thing is the ability for farmers to postpone the sale, whether they can be helped in carrying stocks, whether there can be in the shorter term in India, you can see chilies, where there has been good infrastructure for storage, financing by the banks, whether these kind of things can also be brought into pepper, so that farmers can hold the stock till such time as prices don't become remunerative for them. So this is something, a balancing act that needs to be done. So just to summarize, proper information, spreading the risk, and of course some help from the government on how they can help farmers to store pepper or to finance that. So these are some of the practical suggestions which can be thought of for making it more sustainable.
Right. So very good ideas on transparency and providing farmers with good information and allowing them to do multi-cropping and postpone their sales and ensuring working capital for them. There were other questions which were more on planting, which were asked, and Ravi, these questions are for you. I can just combine two questions together, and you can just give us some broad ideas. So, are there any special varieties that are resistant to quick and slow wilt disease that farmers can use simple means? And they cannot use satellite to perhaps detect the disease, but can they do something from your experience to prevent or at least understand the disease is coming? And are there any new nematicides available for nematode control in pepper?
Yeah, so on varieties, what we have done, we are also learning because as you're aware, 80-85% of the farmers grow Vinland variety, which is the most popular in Vietnam, acclimatized to Vietnamese conditions. So we were also under the impression that that would be the right variety for Vietnam. But we grow 4 varieties and we are working on those varieties. We find some of the varieties to be much better. There is a variety called Malaysian, which we find quite interesting. And it is much more, disease tolerant compared to Vinland, is what our observation has been. So still, there is a cycle which has to go through. We are learning in that process, and yes, it is coming out that there are other varieties other than the commonly used Vinland, which all the farmers use as a better variety. And we are for nematode of Fusarium or Phytophthora, which are diseases which most about 80% of the pepper plantations are destroyed with these diseases. What we have seen is that more of a biocontrol kind of methodology which we use, which we find much more effective, because there is not really big techniques to find out the disease is going to attack the plant. It is more of what we are doing is definitely data analytics by getting to know what is the temperature, moisture, those kind of factors and all that, which needs a lot of equipment and long duration of data to arrive at to infer into that. So that is why we are more getting into the organic biocontrol combination, fortified combination, which is really helping. So we have set up our own lab and we are producing it, and by next year the farmers also will be giving them. We will extend this technology to them. That is our objective. So if there is somebody interested, we can discuss that for sure in Vietnam or anywhere else. India and all people are using, I know very well. So, but anybody more interested to know details about it and how we are going about it, we can discuss. Thank you.
So that is wonderful. And if, as I said, you can extend your technology to marginal farmers, it will definitely come back to you, because you're going to buy pepper from them and process it.
Sure.
So, we would really love to see Olam, extending their, of course, you need to capture your value, but if you can communicate some part of that value, it will be also nice. There was one question on the market. So this one, I think, sir, this is for you, Mr. Girdhar Rao. Is there a significant difference in value of organic pepper and normal pepper, or how big is the organic industry? Because we very often hear that we should use a lot of biomaterial and less chemical fertilizers, etc. So is it really so significant, or what are the premiums that farmers can get by going organic?
See, the organic pepper is basically defined as pepper that is grown without the use of chemicals. It's not just the pesticides, but also the fertilizers that are being used, and even during the storage, in the manufacturing, in transportation, there should be no contamination with any synthetic or any chemical. So if you are really able to produce that, there is a very small market right now. Don't expect the market to be big. There is a small market with good premiums, which is growing. The market is growing, but since the base is small, it will take some time for this to really catch up. However, price is an important concern, and as a result of which, there has been a lot of what I call as organic within quotes pepper, which is being certified and which is being marketed, which is not really organic in the true sense, because in many cases the processing units are not certified, or there are no proper documents or records maintained. However, because of certain demand which exists, and also the buyer there also is buyers are not really particular about whether it's really organic because of the trade pressures. It is more a certificate that has value than the product. So these premiums are small, but if the organic, now second thing about organic is that, if you look at the concerns which are now becoming more important, it is on the greenhouse gases that are being talked about. And now we recently had the European Commission saying that they are going to become a net zero emission target would be achieved in the next, say, 10 years. They're saying 2030. So for this, one of the key requirements is that the nitrogen, the chemical fertilizers which have nitrogen in them, had to be completely replaced with organic means of planting nitrogen back to the soil, because one of the biggest emitters of CO2 equivalent is the nitrogen. So this is something for the future. As we head into the coming years, there will be more demand for organic, mainly because every company would be under pressure to really show some good work being done in climate change reduction. So if you look at that, this is something which is going to catch up. The organic pepper or any other organic produce is going to be more and more in demand in the next 5 years or 10 years. But currently, I told you what the picture is. The demand is small. There are a small number of buyers who are going to pay the kind of premium that really needs to be given for the real organic pepper. And there are intermediate pepper, which is certified organic, which is not really organic.
Right. So the bottom line is basically the market is small, and it is always better to go that direction, because eventually you will have to reach there, and becoming organic takes many years. So it is better to start thinking in that direction and planning at least a portion of your plantation because the market is small right now. So there are two more questions which I'm going to combine, and this one I will request Laura to just throw some light. Laura, you gave us a very good brief on which countries are automatic detention for salmonella essentially, and there was a question that which country has the maximum MRL rejection or salmonella rejection. Related to that, there is a legal question from small producers. When the companies in the US, they import Asta pepper. They import Asta pepper, but they do not want to pay premiums or the cost of sterilizing or say decontaminating the goods in the origin. So now there is confusion with the processor here, because if he does not get his extra 4 cents or 5 cents to process it by ETO or by steam, but the buyer is not willing to pay that, he says, okay, you ship me this material, and people are shipping. They're also, by luck, they have not been caught, or their consignments passed when FDA screened them when there were new companies. but the risk still remains. Some people say, as per the FSMA now, the importer is aware what he is buying, and therefore, if the product fails in the US, and if the contract clearly states that the shipper does not give guarantee for treating the product, I mean, nobody would like to write that on a contract, but I as brokers, we do a lot of business like that, and it is really open. The risk is open to the sellers that we feel, but some people are telling us that as per FSMA, the responsibility of the first importer. So the importers better buckle up and tell the shipper that if something goes wrong, then what is going to happen? Because a lot of people are not aware of that. So how can this also become a part of an Astra contract? So when we say that somebody is going to buy Astra paper, can Astra really work and say, okay, if it is not mentioned, sterilized on the contract, then it is the importer's responsibility? Is something like that possible, or it is a default that the responsibility is of the seller?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and really, it's something we talked a lot about the FSMA requirements and also FDA's practices of import screening, and this is something that FDA is still kind of catching up with their old practices of screening and import, and then the new approach with FSMA. What FSMA says, what the preventive controls rule says, is that either somebody needs to sterilize it. That can occur in origin, or that can occur here in the United States, as long as before it gets to the consumer, somebody is sterile, right? So what the responsibility of the supplier is under the preventive controls for human foods rule is that if they do not control the hazard of salmonella, it is their responsibility to notify their customer that the product has not been controlled for salmonella. And so the product should be labeled with a statement that says this product is not controlled for salmonella. And by labeling the product, and that label is on the package, that label can also occur in contracts, whether those are ASTA contracts or accompanying documentation, the supplier is giving that notification to the importer, to the company in the United States. That is then transferring that responsibility. The supplier has done their job. They identified there's a hazard here, that hazard is salmonella, and we are telling you, we are not controlling this. Okay, it's out of our hands. Now the importer, the company in the United States, is taking that responsibility. So as long as that product is labeled according to the FSMA requirements, and that certainly is something that should also be outlined in contracts, the responsibility goes to the importer, absolutely. And that's information that we have continually also been communicating back to FDA, saying, look, if the product says it's not controlled for salmonella, why would you screen it and test it at the port? We know it could be contaminated. The company is taking responsibility of it in the United States with a complete awareness. This has salmonella. We will control it. At this point, FDA still may say, well, still we want to test it, and we want to make sure then to that company that's buying it, we want to see your validated process control, and we want to look and make sure that that study is completely done in the proper way. But from the supplier standpoint, you label it, you notify your customer, you're in the clear.
Yeah, okay. So what you're saying is the supplier at the negotiation level itself should negotiate with the buyer and make it very clear that this price includes sterilization or it doesn't include sterilization. So both the parties are clear, because buyers sometimes are assuming that, okay, you ship the product to me, you have to comply to legal requirements. But the legal requirement is, shipped, as you said, if one is able to notify very clearly. So the message is very clear in FSMA that either of them has to take responsibility. Yeah, thank you. I think
our experience, Jasvinder, is a little bit different. There is no such thing. There's nothing prevents FDA from sampling your product.
Sure.
There is no such thing as the buyer taking the responsibility. You are at risk if you ship a product which is not treated or not properly treated, or if it is possible that FDA can sample your product, and if they find salmonella, it will not be allowed to enter the US. It is as simple as that. So we should not take the risk. I advise shippers not to take the risk of shipping products which are not meeting the FDA's quality requirements.
Well, that's not.
Sir, all the sorry, Laura, I just said. Unfortunately, all the a large portion of US buyers are sterilizing the product themselves because they have a steam sterilizer in their factory. So they don't want to pay twice because they say, okay, you ship the product and they want to sterilize it themselves before grinding. The people who do not have steam sterilizers in their factory, they buy an ETO product. So now there are so many companies who say, okay, ship an ASTA to me. Now ASTA per se may say salmonella should be negative. So when you say it is ASTA, does it really by default mean negative salmonella? So more education has to be done. That if somebody is shipping ASTA to the US, whether the buyer says or does not say, the supplier has to understand the risk. That and at the beginning tell the buyer that if you're not going to pay, I'm going to write on the contract, which means I am declaring it that it is not sterilized. Because once you declare it, FDA might as well really catch it, because once they read it is not controlled salmonella, for sure will detail the product. Isn't that? Yeah, Laura, sorry.
Well, yeah, so I mean, exactly. And this is sort of the point that I was trying to make before and in my presentation about the import alerts. From a FSMA perspective, what the FSMA requirements say is that the supplier only needs to identify the hazard as long as the importing company is taking control of that. However, at import, regardless, FDA is still screening any product, whether or not that product is going to be treated in the United States or not. This is something that we've tried to communicate to FDA and say, prioritize the products that are treated at origin that are not going to be treated in the United States, because those represent the biggest public health hazard. But FDA is still not quite, to Garrett's point, they absolutely might be testing product that is, not treated and that would be treated in the United States. And so this is where that agreement needs to be clear between the supplying company and the importing company. And this is also where, like I was talking about, you can request to be removed from that import alert if the importing company is taking control of the hazard, if they're treating it, if they don't want to pay for that treatment at origin because they're treating it in the United States, then they can give that information to FDA and get the product released. It takes time to go to the hospital, but that is the regulatory process. And I think it's problematic to say, we'll just treat everything, because what if you're using ethylene oxide and you treat it in one country, you treat it in the United States as well, you could risk also having residue levels that are too high. This requires clear communication between the supplier and the buyer to understand who's taking responsibility and to work through that regulatory process with the FDA.
Right. So basically what you're saying is FDA should be checking more shipments which are already sterilized, because they won't be sterilized in the US anymore, rather than catching people who are shipping product which is going to be sterilized. So it's the other way around.
That's
so
the logical thing to do.
By your logic, and I go. In fact, I'm a proponent of this, because when I read the FSMA, which is such a huge document, and unfortunately people do not go by the detail, of the document. So. Well, we will from our side, we will try to educate people, there is a risk, and then they should take the, whatever call they take, it should be an informed call, then later they should not feel that, something went wrong and they were not aware of the problem. Because new exporters who don't even speak English, we help sell for them and they want to come up, because they are the ones who are buying from farmers directly, and they are the ones influencing the farmers who are collectors. And these are the new exporters of today. So it is going to be Vietnamese companies more coming ahead and being able to value add and ship out themselves. So thank you very much for this clarification. I think it really helps. There is no new question as such, which is unanswered. If we have missed something, Nipu, you can please tell us. I think my time is also over, and everybody has been exhausted and waiting. I would like to thank the panelists for giving these questions were not easy to answer, and I know that I pushed you a little bit on the corner, but thank you very much for giving these expert opinion. And I'm sure this, even if people are not there in the online session, these will really help us to tell people how to control risks in a larger manner. Over to you, Nipu. Yeah.
Yes, I think Lian has something to say. She was raising her hand.
Yes, I am a student in the class. So thank you, Nipu. First of all, I think I would take the last chance because from what Jasvinder as the moderator for the panel discussion, it's a very interesting and you raised very some comments quite tough. Cannot answer now, but that is a food for thought for us to think more and for the industry to think about that for the as a way forward for the 2021. So as a last comment, I would say two points. The first point that a little bit go back to what Jasvinder said that about the data. I don't see much intervention and comments based on the report given by IPC. It doesn't mean automatically I would understand that you are perfectly agreed with me. However, as a coordinator, from the perspective of coordinator, working with the government to collecting data and based on that, analyzing, assessing, and giving disseminate information to the industry, because what information floating in the industry must come from the government. So from that story, I know I totally agree with the moderator who said that the government need to work hard and work hard in order to provide much better data, more accurate data. So the procedure among the government agency that if they don't have only one single ministry or authority to take care of all the data, the plantation side, the trade side, the import, export, so many inter ministry work. So somehow for some countries we got difficulties in encouraging the government certain ministry to deliver to the maximum capacity of their work in order to work out in terms of statistics and figures to provide the industry. So that is the constraint up to now. Even we have been working hard over the last 4 years, but that is the important thing that the industry also got to keep in mind. So if in the situation that you complain or you say no, or you say yes, or to some certain extent that you can agree or you not agree with the IPC data, I'm okay with that, because I think better we fix the trend of the data or the trend of the cycle of the situation rather than we just very strictly and very automatically stick to the absolute number. Because if the absolute, because the different player in the market has a different point of view and different strategies, either long-term, medium-term, or short-term for your business. Either you just doing something like professional, or you want to go up to the root of the tree, like up to the upstream, as the experience from Olam, Vietnam, and Darova briefly was shared. So back to the question to the data that IPC, you can have the confidence in me that we are working hard to coordinate with the government, but somehow they have some situation also in analyzing and updating the data because of the capacity and the system. So that is the fact that the industry also want to keep in mind. Having said that, IPC as a coordinator and secretariat, we working closely with the government and also with the support and justification from the industry. So I think
please download the IPC Farmers app for your country from the Google Play Store or from the App Store for more training videos, guidance on cultivation, daily price information, marketing support, exchanging ideas with other farmers, and for online help from an expert. Search for IPC Farmers app.